All right, welcome to the build. So it's moving quickly.
And their product velocity is intense. We're both pretty involved in the Langchain community.
This is going to be an industry, like the whole thing is going to explode.
The hype cycle, it's like just because you hear everybody start talking about these things doesn't necessarily mean it's the right.
Need to go back, find out more because it's really interesting.
We're both obsessed with AI and their entire stack is just pivoted to agents.
The next question that usually comes after that is like, well, I'm fine-tuning an open model.
That's the biggest thing with the latest spec.
An exploding distribution vector.
I'm really excited. I think everybody is. I'm not the only one.
The build. The broken.
What's my name?
This is so random. I don't know what I was thinking about the other day. But it was like, what's the first like AI or what felt like AI? And then for some reason, this, the classic speak and spell.
Oh, that's amazing. That is amazing. Can you do it again?
Brain.
Do it again.
Level B. Press go to begin. Letter mode. Listen and press the letter keys to learn the letters of the alphabet. S.
It's funny though, like it's such an iconic sound or voice that even little 10-year-old around here, I was like, oh, you won't think anything of this. And he's like, oh, that's the thing from, now I can't even remember, some movie. I was like, yeah, you're right, actually. It's so iconic.
That's the fucking greatest.
I'm going to turn my voice. I'm going to turn my chat GPT voice into the speak and spell voice.
Big Tom and little Cam coming at you.
All right. Fair enough. Tom, how's your week been?
You are a lot smaller than me, so I kind of feel like it's fair. My week has been intense and exciting, so that's kind of good. What about yours?
Good. Yeah, it's hard to believe it's Friday already. It's been going by so fast, but...
You've been deep in the MCP Central weeds. What have you been up to this week?
In the weeds? Yeah. I have some... Yeah, I've been focusing on more the business side of things, the business features that you probably won't see on the public website. But something that I added, I think this week or last week, is any of the MCP servers that are publicly hosted or remote hosted, you can just one button click to add them to your cursor. Well, Cursor and Goose have an actual thing called deep links that's pretty cool. If you haven't heard of that, check it out. So that allows you to one click add them. Those are not hosted by me. Here's a disclaimer. Those are still like, I don't know who runs those. So you still have to be careful. But if there's servers out there that you're familiar with or you vetted, you can one click install them. So
that sounds awesome. That's exactly what I want. I want convenience, one click install. I saw those deep links on Cursor because I'm going to talk about Cursor 2 today. They look pretty cool. But I was like, oh, what am I going to do with that? That's where you come in.
Yeah. And Goose, have you ever used Goose?
I haven't, no. So Goose is it's an agent first, right? It's the only thing.
Well, they actually have agentic capabilities they're building into it, but that's the open source desktop application from Block or, like Jack Dorsey, all his companies. So they have this open source project for a desktop app that's actually pretty good. And I was just thinking, I don't know that we've ever even mentioned it. I mean, I don't use it primarily by any means, but I use it quite a bit. So it's worth checking out.
Yeah, too many things to check. Got halfway into like migrating over to Warp. I'm like, you keep telling me to get onto Llama Cloud, which I want you to show me today. Because I'm like, so yeah, there's too many things, but I want you to do the demo of like Kimi K2 Thinking, right? Because you're saying you're using that a lot. Or is it Minimax? Which one are you on?
Well, yeah, it was GPT OSS 120, and then Minimax, and then the next week, the new version of Kimi K2 Thinking. So now that's the one that I'm primarily using. On that, we did a little segment about open code, and I showed how I kind of created a proxy, and I don't know if it's really considered hacking it or if there's better ways to do it, but I had hooked up Llama Cloud to OpenCode, and that allows you to run these huge open source models on someone else's hardware. And ever since then, I've pretty much been doing the same thing with everything from agents in LangGraph Cloud, agents in Cloudflare. The other day, we were talking about Langsmith Agent Builder, and maybe we should mention the back and forth emails we had. So we had our agents communicating back and forth with each other, basically. And it was really fun until both of us ran out of credits on Anthropic, and that was it. It didn't take long. That was the point where I was like, okay, I do need to take a take a couple minutes and hook this up to Olama Cloud, because that is a subscription. Right now, I'd pay for the $20 a month. And they also have $100 a month, which is like 5 times the capability or the amount that you can consume.
Yeah, I think I need to get onto
So,
it
yeah.
because I spent like maybe $20 talking to you via my by agent. I think we should open that up again because I want to go. So today I want to go through the DeepAgents kind of package. We can go through the CLI for that because that powers the Langchain agent builder. Those guys are building that up pretty fast, which is pretty exciting. And it's so far, based on my testing, it's like the smartest agent builder I've used, but it's a bit constrained at the moment.
Yeah.
Based on the fact that you have to use an Anthropic OpenAI key, but they do have something they're about to push to expand that out to other things. And then they're slowly adding other connectors in. I don't know when they're going to launch it, but I think it's going to be sick. The other thing I really want to, it's like a late addition to the run sheet, actually, Cameron, is, Feifei Li and World Labs. I think I showed them on the World Models kind of episode about a month ago. They actually have a world model description kind of playground for the Apple Vision Pro. So I kind of want to just spin up the Apple Vision Pro and show you that because it looks pretty sick. I saw it on X. We'll see how we go on that. What else is on the run sheet? I was going to try and talk through everything to do with Nvidia, but none of that stuff, I can't get any of that stuff working. So I'm not going to do any of that.
I mentioned to you that with the DGX Spark, they have so many cool things, but it's a different architecture. So all their NIM stuff, I haven't been able to get that to work. I know it will. It's just I don't have the time right now to like fix all the dependency issues and stuff, but you're supposed to be able to just one click install these entire apps. I haven't got that to work. So maybe sometime we'll do that deep dive.
I feel like every nerd has like an expensive paperweight. Like mine is my Apple Vision Pro and yours is your DGX. It's like you spend all this money on something just so you can have it.
I still get a lot of, I feel like value just running inference. I can't run the massive, huge models. If you were to do some training, I have actually started looking at, I've like done some experiments with fine tuning and training, which I think I'll get more use out of that. So I don't know if I'd go that far. I wouldn't call it a paperweight yet.
Well, I don't know. It won't speak for you, but my Apple Vision Pro is basically just so that I can say I own an Apple Vision Pro. I should have just bought an old Jaguar like I was planning to. It's basically the same price. Yeah, other than that, mate, we've just got a couple of demos. I want to show this Dojo thing off pretty fast and then this XR websets demo, and that's probably it. I've been deep in the weeds on like product management actually, so I haven't been actually doing much heavy lifting. I am actually, as we kick this off, so I recently had a few changes in my job and started just doing a bit more regular product management stuff. And vibe coding product tools, the tools that probably you would have used, things like Craft.io is probably my favorite from back in the day for like roadmap planning and like KPI tracking and stuff. It's a bit old now, and then obviously things like Confluence and Jira, whatever your chosen tool is, like vibe coded apps are way, way better. Like this is the first time I've actually tried to sort of say, all right, here's my roadmap, here's my context, here's my actual product data. Generate me a tracking or product like planning tool using product framework, like product building frameworks is exceptional because it's exactly what you want. And in the past, I've always been hacking those things to sort of my exact kind of use case or my exact product kind of philosophy. That's been great. I'm like, I was trying to think about it like, there's no real like AI product building kind of tool. There's like Linear is like the new age kind of Jira and Slack for communication, all that sort of stuff, but nothing like in the middle where you're going from Figma to plan. But maybe maybe it actually is just in time software. I might share some of that stuff with you guys that's not too proprietary, but I was delighted by the outcome actually, because I can take my actual product analytics data and build a road mapping planning kind of KPI outcome tool over the top of it rather than having to hack that shit together. It was really cool. Yeah. That was the only cool vibe coding thing I've done this week.
Were you going to show that? Or
you
said maybe you have to find some stuff that you actually can show.
Yeah, I can show a bit. It's not world beating. Like it's not anything you'd look at it and go, oh, that's like most innovative thing I've ever seen. But the difference is it's exactly what I need as opposed to hacking like these other, my experience anyway of hacking these other SaaS tools towards like a product planning kind of toolkit. Yeah. Then the only other,
We were talking about the other day with this Langchain agent builder. They have integrations for, your Slack, Linear, some of these. And I have workflows set up so that some of these agents will run a process and then drop the output in, say, Slack. And then there's other agents in Slack and they're triggered. And I don't know if you're really using any of those types of workflows, but it starts to get into a whole nother level of, like required planning. And even, I don't know, maybe it's me, I'm a very visual person, but I feel like it's gone where I'm like, how do I do this to holy shit, like now I have so many more capabilities. I need to sit down and like visually map this out or write it down a little bit more, because I feel like I just have agents on agents on agents that are in triggers upon triggers, and it's at some point like counterproductive,
Actually, really, so you make a good point, and I've found that as well, which is you can't give up the whole idea of a workflow. It can't go away. What I really want is a canvas that does both of those things so that I can plug in, do exactly what you're talking about, where it's like, all right, this is the workflow over time, over a journey, whatever it is. But then in a chunk of it where I can just select a bunch of inputs or it might be like, all right, here is a bunch of Slack channels and stuff. Everything's coming in here, and then put a LangGraph agent onto that. Like I kind of want both. I want the workflow builder automation chunk, and then when all of the variables and random information comes into one central place, I want like a LangGraph agent that's smart to go and execute over that. And then like maybe downstream, there's like another one. They might be able to talk to each other. Should you want to bring up the emails? But I actually want to see the LangGraph agent. But like on that, sort of like these agents that are non-deterministic, they're not workflow kind of, they're not sequences, repeatable sequences. They're like designed to be able to handle variables and random inputs. I still want to put them into some sort of flow. Like I still want, it's kind of like a person, like on a pipe, on a production line. Like I still want that person at a point in a production line.
Yeah. I think for me, it's more about, we've both kind of, I don't know, talked trash on the whole, like OpenAI's workflow builder idea. And not to say that, that can't completely go away. I think for me, it's more about context though, rather than saying you have to take this required action. It's more about, my issue now is the context in certain situations. Like that's the challenge, is you can have all the information, but when you have it coming from so many different places and then potentially recycled, or like it's like the second iteration coming out of the second agent, then it all starts to kind of fall apart. So I don't think I personally go towards the like do exactly this at these moments, but you lose context pretty quickly. So I think for me, that's what it is.
What do you mean the second turn or the second thing? Like, what does that mean?
Like if you have, say, agent builder, pull in some data, do some type of processing, and then drop it in like Slack or say Linear, and then an agent from Slack does something else with that. Like we've kind of talked about how after the AI processes things so many times, there's a word for it. What's you get diminishing returns where it's kind of starts to get worse. So you really need like processing and then injecting more context, processing, injecting more context. If you don't have that additional step, of course, there are like a billion scenarios that we could potentially be talking about, but just in general, I feel like if you just take some type of content and then you have AI process it multiple times, it starts getting worse.
Right.
You haven't had that happen?
Yeah. No, I have. I think it depends on what you're using. I think a lot of the modern tools have gotten around that, right? Like,
well, that's what DeepAgents really solves. So
yeah, and even like DeepAgents, but well, I guess if we talk about DeepAgents, we could dive into it now if you want and go through it. But
yeah,
even
that might
like
be a good transition.
Some of the more in-depth, like ChatGPT Thinking, for example, I've been testing just throwing like make it better at it. So like you can do multiple turns on these things to try and like get it to iterate and think harder, right? And I kind of feel like, or are you talking about like when it goes out of the context of one agent and goes into something else, it just deteriorates? I guess probably need to visualize it so I can understand.
Yeah, I'm talking, I guess maybe what I'm talking about is more like hyper personal stuff. And with this agent builder example, I'm talking about like emails or notes of things. And it's at some point it gets so far off. Like it was like trying to send an email to my brother about some random business venture, but that was after it had done all these other things. I don't know, Tom. I thought maybe I'm alone on this. So I'll have to find some better like concrete examples that I can walk you through on that.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about this before. I think it's more like, I think what you're describing is just the reality of us, the fact that we hold a lot more things in our mind that we don't describe.
Exactly. More like the world, getting into the world model stuff. Yeah.
Or more just like, you know, the context of, like I put this agent, and I'll share it here and we can go through it, and then we can talk about like the DeepAgents package as well, which is here. So I built a couple of agents in here on this. I built this podcast producer, right, which is the one we showed last time. And here are all of its tools, podcast producer. And basically it's like a aggregate kind of do everything that a producer would do. Here are all the different tools. This is the different things that you need to do. And I sort of said, oh, here's my website, you know, look at the most recent episode, kind of give me some ideas and plan the next episode for me, right? And I was like, I just assumed that it would be able to get enough context out of, say, what we've discussed and then come up with some good ideas. But in the context of what it came up with, it was kind of crap. It was kind of crappy because it didn't have enough of the context of what I'm holding in my mind around what I think we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And my expectation, like I think most of the time when these agents fail, it's your expectation of things that you haven't actually specified to the agent is 99% of the reasons why they fail, I think. Because it comes back, it's like, you know, if you weren't running the Build podcast and this is like what you got in terms of like a schedule, that Dunning-Kruger effect, you'd be like, that's pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That nailed it. And you're like, as soon as you're doing anything related to a task or something, comes back and you're like, yeah, it's not quite right. Or like, it's exactly the same as when you onboard a person into a business and they're like, yeah, I've got these ideas. I'm like, yeah, but here's the context, you know, we've been doing that for 10 years. Here are all the things you don't know yet. It's that sort of factor, which isn't necessarily the software problem per se, but it's definitely the outcome problem that they need to overcome.
Yeah. Well, you hear people say that you have to manage agents just like people. And it is true. Cause like what we're talking about, I've had that same issue in real life where you're you're like delegating things and then someone comes back and you're like, yeah, they cannot read my mind. Like, I guess I need to explain it much better. I didn't lay these things out. It's the same thing.
Yeah. I think I'm going to see if this actually goes through, or like we don't, this is the run sheet for today. We don't appreciate the scope of context that we don't describe often, but you know, that's not uncommon. And actually, like for these guys and how they've done it, API keys, Jesus Christ. OpenAI key. Let's go. I've changed the model. This one.
I'm looking forward to the next update, or they haven't put out a ton of documentation of how this works because it's still in progress, but stuff like the workspace keys, it's not very clear to me. So you didn't see a Kimi option there, did you? When you were switching the models, you just had Anthropic and OpenAI, right?
Yeah. Oh, give me a second. I'm just going to put my API key in, so I won't. I think there's still a few things they need to work out on here. I think either that or my API keys needs rotating, but
where I was going with that is I told you to get Ollama Cloud working. I had to enter the Ollama API key as OpenAI. And so what I'm wondering is, did it overwrite the OpenAI key in the workspace? And now change yours, and then I'll kick mine off, and hopefully I don't get the same issue, because that means we can't really, I can't use the Ollama Cloud, or you can use mine, I guess.
I have no idea, mate. If you were expecting me to do something related to that, then it definitely hasn't happened yet.
No, just update your key, get it working, and then tell me once you have it working, and then I'll kick mine off and see if it breaks.
Let's give this another try. No, I updated that in the actual agent, not in the account. Let's see if it actually goes through. Authentication. I got an error, authentication error, but it is actually still running. So I don't know, mate.
I've had that actually too, where, yeah, it's still going. Perfect.
Yeah. So all I did was basically say, look, this is what we want to cover, which is Claude skills in the agent builder, the DeepAgents package and the agent CLI, Exa demo, Kimi K2, Dojo, Cursor 2, browser, Cursor 2, and then fine tuning with Unsloth. Actually, I did a bit of reading on that. It looks really, Unsloth looks incredible. And then finally, code execution is coming to the fore. Here we go. It's very meta. We're getting EXA to research EXA. This is still going. And what I really look forward to is the tracing on here so I can actually see and debug the individual agents, right? And when a request goes down between each of these sub-agents, it's not quite enough visibility, whether it's the topic specialist. What was cool is, and this goes back to the context thing, is basically how simple it is when you're getting something to be generative just to follow up with a couple of questions. Like we saw it with obviously deep research, but the fact that it kind of just hits you with a couple of different things, makes it so much more delightful to use. I just want to go make an agent with lots of sub-agents that makes my life as a product manager, a software company.
So you're in case you didn't catch it, Tom here, he's creating a agent, potentially several agents by just typing in natural language. Here's what I need. It's going to interpret the request and then design that agent team, assign the tools. Did we actually cover that previously?
But yeah, we briefly showed it, or I think maybe I used the quick starts, but that podcast example is what I use. I used this technique and I basically just said, look, I want you to be a podcast producer. I want you to create as many sub-agents as possible to try and push the envelope on the complexity to see what happens. Cool. I'll make you a comprehensive product management assistant. And then it writes, let's explore what tools and triggers there are. It searches those. Then behind the scenes, it basically starts effectively like a to-do list, which we can go into the DeepAgents package and talk about. But it's this part, which is so simple, that breaks down what you want to get over that context limit sharing, right? Because it's so exhausting to keep prompting, right? And doing follow-ups, but it's so much easier to just break it down, simplify it, and then just ask a couple of questions. It's such a simple thing. All right, what am I going to use? Linear and Slack, Linear and Slack and Gmail and Google Calendar. Oh, they've got a pylon for customer support. All right, I'll say everything. Tell me about your product, target customers, anything specific context that would make it work better. My product is the build AI dev community. Oh, why am I doing this? This is what I should do. Bloody banging on about this for ages. Is Whisperflow. Have you converted to using this yet? It's the greatest.
I wouldn't say converted. I always forget about it.
Yeah, I always forget about it too. And I'm like, God, I just need to just do it, right? Function.
Generally, I don't like things like that just run on my computer all the time in the background, and that's part of it. But it is pretty cool. When I remember, it's very useful.
Need it to sound like me. I just need it to work. Oh, that's why. Perfect. The build is a podcast and a website that has resources, concepts, ideas, and information to build AI agents. We connect with developers, startup founders, and other sexy, cool people. Oh, Christ, that's so good. I love live demos. Do I want it to run on a schedule? Okay, yeah, mix of all of these and submit the answers. Here we go. Whisperflow, fail. Let's see. Now it's going to go off and create that. While it's doing that, all right, here we go. The product manager assistant, it's created that. Let's see what other sub-agents it builds. While we do that, let's pull this up. So I listened to what the guys have talked about for this agent builder. Basically, they said there are things that you want to automate that you probably never build, even if you have the technical skills. That was part of the motivation to do this. The other part of the motivation is just to basically open up the access for other agent engineers who are not developers, right? And you were asking me what's the plan for this? I don't actually know what. We got access to the beta, but whether they're going to launch this as an individual product or is this just a point to, is this a starter app builder, where it's it sits in Langsmith and just then gets converted over into a deployed agent that you just iterate on, and then maybe you get the code and then maybe you go from there. Not exactly sure. Based on what they've done in the past, it might be the latter. Here we go. So behind the scenes of these DeepAgents, we haven't talked much about these, right? Hopefully you've got the CLI running, because I don't have the CLI of that running up and running yet. But, here we go. What sub-agents did it build? This is basically what it is behind the scenes. Is it has a planning tool, which is basically just like a Claude checklist. And I think they took a lot of the inspiration from Claude on this, right? Claude really is the first tool to go really hard on this stuff and do it really well. Then there's a detailed comprehensive system prompt. They talk about that being critical because these agents that have the ability to execute very complicated tasks and long-running tasks typically have a very detailed and structured system prompt that deals with complexity, deals with failovers, deals with issues, deals with routing. and then a file system to read and write from, and then the ability to create custom subagents underneath. And it seems like a simple architecture, but it's very effective when you start using them. Like I said, this has been probably one of the best or the smartest agent builders I've used. And Langchain basically said that this is the secret sauce that sits underneath that. So let's see what.
It's blowing my mind how simple some of these concepts are, really. Like we're talking about skills, Claude skills, the DeepAgents, and not to say it's like super easy to create it, but conceptually you're like, oh, it's just taking notes and keeping track of what it's doing. Wow, amazing.
Yeah, and they said that actually
makes all the difference in the world, though.
Yeah, it has absolutely no. They did say that this will be, when they go live, this will be fixed. It has actually no technical use, that to-do list. Literally, it doesn't connect into anything programmatically. It's literally just something to refer back for the agent to refer back to. It's as simple as that, which is kind of what I love.
And when you say files,
it's not the ability to read and write.
It's not even saving it to actual storage. It's just a virtual file system in memory, which now they have persistent. I mean, maybe we'll talk about that. But the first iteration, like what we're talking about, it's a virtual file system. It's not even actually saving it and writing it down anywhere. So when I say like simple concepts, it really is.
Yeah. Let's see what's in the toolbox. It is very and it's kind of great that those simple things have such outweighed returns in the context of building agents. Like I actually like that. Kind of means that like if you can just think logically and you can structure things simply, kind of like Claude skills, right? You can actually build pretty incredible apps. All right, here's my agent, my product management agent. What did I get? This is going to start queuing up tasks for you to execute on the vault, Cameron. Maybe I'll need to spin up the OpenSUI engineer to start executing on some of these. It'd be really cool, actually. Just get this pushing stuff consistently into linear. Just see how autonomous we could get it. The product researcher, stakeholder communicator. All right, that's going to be communicating with you and me. A backlog manager and a feedback analyzer. We don't have any customer feedback yet. Maybe that will have to be YouTube comments. And then just see what would be pushed into an OpenSUI agent. Make it look sexy. Yeah, did you want to spin up and try out the CLI?
Yeah, do you have, I can show my screen and it's really the same thing. It's just in the command line. And then for the CLI version, you could create like more coding agents. I can.
Yeah, if you reckon it'd be cool. Otherwise, we can move on to some of the other stuff in the run sheet.
I feel like we have a lot of themes that all run together because you mentioned already the Anthropic code execution. We talked about code mode. I have some things there. And then even this agent builder, when we talk about code mode and Anthropic code execution, they are actually applying those concepts in agent builder. I wanted to kind of show you how I don't know if I really reverse engineering is the right word, but
that's cool.
I was able to figure out like, here's how they're executing these tools. And it's the same idea. They're executing them by code.
Yeah, show me. So the code, like we talked about this.
First, I know we do a good job of just jumping around. First, you asked run the
this is the
CLI version.
CLI.
So yeah, UV run DeepAgents. So this is everything Tom was talking about with the Langchain DeepAgents, but you can run it in CLI. Oh shit, I forgot about that. I hadn't saved the, 1 second. Let me get these keys.
Why does your terminal say you have mail?
I have notifications set up. That was a Claude code thing. I don't really use that actually anymore. I should clean that up.
You definitely have peak nerd chops if you've got notifications coming through your terminal.
Dude, you know what's funny? I was talking about that speak and spell thing. I was telling Tiffany, like, man, there's all these forums. These people are talking about chips from the 1980s and like, what a bunch of nerds. She just looks at me like, I don't know if you have a lot of room to talk.
Yeah. All of these, look at these nerds. Just be careful. They're teaching Sand how to think, guys.
Yeah, pretty much. Shiny rocks. Well, I have too many projects, man. I've messed around with all these DeepAgents. I have so many. And I haven't been using the Langchain DeepAgents CLI, but I created my own. It's still in the works, but I started tweaking it so that I could run or more easily do like MCP based things. So this is my version. I just typed in DeepAgents and so I can do like DeepAgents MCP list or setup.
This is sick.
Well, this is in progress. So granola, I did set up a granola. Yeah. Maybe I'll show that at a different time, but it kind of works. I was trying to do, actually, I guess, very similar to the agent builder type of stuff, just in the command line. So yeah, I know this happens like every time. It's hard to, I wasn't really prepared to show that, but
So good.
here, I'm not very good on the spot, man. That's the issue.
You're
What were
great on the
we,
spot. You're great on the spot, my friend.
it's like, so you were showing your agent builder, your podcast. I mean, I have a flow here. Did you show your full output?
I didn't turn it over to give it a crack. I just wanted to show that flow and the fact that it spins those things up pretty consistently. I can spin a couple of things. I'll push a couple of things through it. But yeah, I was just thinking like that DeepAgents package, like I can open it up just to give everyone kind of a sense of like what's actually powering under the hood and what makes those things a bit different. I can just put the links in the show notes. The guys can watch some of the videos if they want. I was kind of relying on you a little bit to sort of like unpack a bit of these, like, all right, the planning thing is basically just writing a to-do. The context management, like, what are some of these things actually doing? Like reading and writing a file, and then the actual actions.
Well, why don't we just show if you want to illustrate the DeepAgents, why don't we just show the UI? And I can even show you that running on my DGX Spark, so I can prove to you it's not a paperweight.
There we go. That's great. There we go. That's exactly what
you're
I'm
talking
looking
about. You're trying to explain the iterative part of it, right? So if I say like research, the build podcast.
And this is the UI package that they launched as part of it, right? They've got like DeepAgents UI or chat UI. Research the build podcast from the Build AI pod. What they have said about Langchain DeepAgents in the past.
So you can see here. Yeah, again, this is a tweaked version of their UI. So it should be, it says it's using GPT OSS 120, and that's running on my DGX Spark. So here I'm on my MacBook, and then I have the DGX serving that over the local network, but I can access it remotely as well. Okay, so here you see it created a checklist. It says write to-dos, and then it has a status. So after it essentially is like task decomposition, I guess, and then it gives you an update. It says, okay, I'm in progress on this first task. And I will say, like sometimes on this, I don't know if it's something I did or maybe the open source models, but it doesn't always run continuously. But also even in Agent Builder, sometimes it doesn't either. So I think there are little quirks you got to work out. So now it said, first then it jumps around. I can't read it.
Cool. And then it's doing the research. When did we have we actually mentioned this a lot more than I realized? Probably.
Basically, like these are the same types of workflows that if you're using a chat GPT or some type of chatbot, you end up doing this yourself. Just it takes like 20, 100 steps, right? So this is essentially like a one-shot version of, and it's, of course, it's not going to be exactly, it's not going to define the steps that you would have exactly. It's not going to take the next step like you would exactly. But in general, I mean, I feel like it saves a lot of time. So I use this particular interface probably more than ChatGPT now, to be honest, for general web search type of stuff.
Right. The reason why I'm using you as a sort of like a vehicle to do research on this, I need to figure out like, well, my question to you is like, when you start with something like this, so this deep research package, I'm like, all right, I have a sequence of tasks that are non-trivial that I want to embed in some sort of deep agent, or I want to basically create an agent around it. How do I hack or start with this deep agent framework? That's sort of my question is like, all right, what's the best way to make this more than just like a research agent or a it's always like get the weather in this city and then plan out my day, or like book me up, like tell me when I should travel there. Like
if you run, so they have the Python package and they have a JavaScript version. I primarily use the JavaScript stuff, but there's a prompts. I think even in the stock package, there's just a prompts file, if I remember right. And you don't really have to modify that many things. And if you're talking about how do you deploy it, like on the cloud or other places besides your desktop, I don't know that there's anything like that's the same issues and same type of stuff with any type of agents. I don't really feel like there's anything specific to DeepAgents. I mean, I don't know. Like, so Tom, you've deployed, say, the Langchain React agent, tool use agent, right? And you deploy that in LangGraph Cloud or somewhere. It's really the same, really kind of the same thing. I mean, sorry, do you have like, when you were trying to deploy it, you sit down and you're like, so like, what's different? What issues did you run into? Or why does it seem different?
Yeah, so the reason why I'm thinking about this more aggressively is that I have a range of users that are specialists in valuations and the property domain. And I would like to give them effective co-pilots that can either accelerate their work or validate things that they would usually have to do manually that are not really core to their kind of expertise. Where their expertise is more like data analysis, valuations, like local market knowledge around properties, those sorts of things, or in some cases like property types. They might be experts in rural properties or commercial properties, whatever it is. And so the things that they will need are very dynamic. Like at any one given point in their journey from like being told about a property to coming up with, say, a specific kind of property valuation or property assessment kind of output, they're just there's so many random kind of branching variables that come off that make it really unpredictable. Not everything is unpredictable, right? But there are component parts when they have to justify these decisions and things like that. It lends itself to some sort of cognitive architecture like this DeepAgent package where it's like co-pilot mode. And I can say like, all right, at the point at which the user needs this data to be validated, public record information, whatever it is, I want it to be able to go off, spawn those sub-agents or build that execution, have the tools ready, and then just go and be able to do it and come back into the flow of the user in a coherent way. And it's not clear to me how to kind of dive into these packages to kind of start hacking them towards something like that usable outcome, right? It is quite energizing to see how the agent builder works, because then you can like toggle on, toggle off. You can see component parts of like, it's a simple Simon kind of interactive kind of but I want to but it's not meaty enough. Like I can't like connect it to a bunch of the property data APIs or like databases that I'd needed to have access to. I'd need to have computer use execution. There's a whole bunch of other random stuff in there that has lots of failure points and like failure modes and like all of these things. But then presenting it back to the user in a way that sort of doesn't get in their way is actually meaningfully like a +1 as opposed to a minus of their workflow. It's quite hard. It's really hard to it's hard to pick it up and then build something that is a really meaningful co-pilot as opposed to just picking something up and saying, hey, I'm just going to take away that task from you now. That goes into an agentic kind of guardrailed kind of environment, just comes back to the user as a response. I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be like, this feels like it's like an assistant, but tailored to a very complex branching kind of expertise domain, like a property valuer or, a medical analyst or, a financial expert, whatever it is. It's those 10 steps beneath, and the way that it, like for search, like research is fine, but I kind of want the co-pilot like this to fit the user like a glove. And it's sort of hard to see how to get it there, Yeah. That's why I was asking you, my resident expert.
That I thought of.
You're my resident expert.
Something that's really cool with the agent builder is that, I mean, you saw Tom, you created it from scratch by just describing it. Here's what I want. And then it designed the agent, the primary agent, and sub-agents. You can also provide it feedback, go through iterations, and you can say, hey, you could take the output, annotate it, mark it up just like you would in, say, evaluations, and then feed it back to it and say, here's what I thought was good, here's what I thought was bad, and it will modify itself. I don't know if you've done a lot of that, but it actually works quite well. 2, when you're talking about, you said something about like tools and how do you get your real estate data or something like that. I mean, when I said it's no different, that's what I mean. With the DeepAgents package, it supports MCP, it supports Langchain tools. So there are, and maybe it's not super in depth, but there are some instructions that talk about that. Like, okay, I was saying the system prompt. I mean, that's plain English. And it tells you where that's at, researchagent.py. So you can go in there and modify or that's not the system prompt, whatever, research instructions. So you can, if you're running the package like outside of the agent builder, you can modify them directly in the files that way. I don't know if that was part of your question, but then there's, system prompt and then tools. Of course, this is my focus. what I think is exciting. So then you can add tools. Somewhere here, I have a version of DeepAgents that has a bunch of MCP servers connected to it. So then, like on our build, we have a build MCP server, and then Exa, and all these things. So you can attach and insert whatever context you'd like. You just have to have the tools, and that's no different than if you're running a like React agents or anything that's been out for a while. So Tom, did I misunderstand your question, or does that help at all?
Yeah, no, that definitely helps. A couple of follow-ups of like, have you connected up long-term memory to any of these DeepAgents? Like, how does that work?
That's what's cool about LangGraph. That's one of their primary features is long-term memory. And they had a blog post just the other day about adding persistent memory to the DeepAgents. But if you deploy this, I believe if you deploy it on LangGraph Cloud, it has persistent memory by default. So like what would be your use case on memory? Is it more like the iterative modifying itself, or is it like...
So the domain that I work in, the users, so and this relates to when we did that deep dive on memory, we should probably update that actually because the field has moved on a little bit, but there's memory of the application. So effectively like what letter calls like, they're like a memory stack. It's sort of like there's like the system level memory. And then there's like the user level memory, and they have them as memory blocks. Like, the Langchain guys, they structure it slightly differently, but it's all kind of the same. The thing for what I'm thinking of in the use case, users have very specific patterns, repeatable patterns and styles and preferences that would need to be embedded over time into like a pattern of response for the individual user, but then also embedded and encoded kind of memory patterns around how to respond in certain scenarios that would need to be updated by like a meta programmer. For example, there's always like compliance and legal and all sorts of other kind of things that are constantly changing that need to be reflected. And usually those are reflected now in like very programmatic kind of if else then that kind of like if this then that style kind of logic in the applications we currently build. In the agent builder, that's cool because you can just use the free text and just literally say, hey, update your memory, do this from now on. But it's not necessarily a pattern of like, all right, when you're talking to Tom, he likes to do regression analysis in this way. Also, there's like 5 or 6 other variables of like the local market where Tom might be valuing properties that he has in his mind and in context that need to be reflected in the agent. If the agent's going to be beneficial for Tom, that would completely destroy the experience for Sally, who might even operate in the same city. It's that level of nuance that's really challenging.
Yeah, and I might have understated this DeepAgents CLI, and I think I combined maybe there's a separate blog post, but when I look, can you still see my screen? Yeah. It says that with CLI, it has persistent memory across sessions. So I think that's what you're talking about. Now, the question is, the agent builder does not, I don't think. So will they have that? I'm sure they will, because that is a main feature of just LangGraph in general.
Yeah, you would assume eventually. Basically, it's like, I want to authenticate with, something like connect up clerk or something, which means I can then have user sessions, and those user sessions have some sort of recurring pattern of self-improvement that you can embed into the agent. Ideally, that would also be meta-programmed using language as opposed to meta-programmed using code. I don't know. So if you could have that spun up on my desk by Monday, that'd be great, Cameron.
I mean, it's just so crazy to me that, I don't know, it was like, how do I create agents? And it didn't take very long before it's like, now I have too many agents. It's unmanageable, and running stuff like on your desktop is not the answer. So especially when you're get into an organization, I don't know if there's a ton of great answers or ways to manage those things. So I talk a lot about building systems, and what I'm excited about is I think we're finally to that point where building full systems and really thinking about the big picture, and not just like one person running agents on their desktop or one person running their Microsoft Copilot stuff in their own environment. I mean, it's a whole different story when you're talking about the overall organization. So I'm excited.
I'm excited. You're excited. All right. You want to move on? Can you tell me about your Kimi K2 Thinking?
Yeah.
Love,
first,
hate,
I guess
just love relationship.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is where I always fall apart. We get in the middle of a demo and then we don't even show what happened. Just to finish that off, I went through that multi-step process. I showed it doing the planning and taking notes. So this is the output we got. I said, find out about from the Build Podcast website, what did they said about DeepAgents? And it went through a bunch of iterations and internet searches. It found the timestamps where we've talked about that.
So is this made up or did we actually do that? Does it show the episode? Did it actually show the episode and the reference and the timestamp for that? Episode 11, episode 13, and episode 20. Okay.
Well, here's what, let's say run critique and citations with hyperlinks. All right. So we can come back to that. We'll see. I believe so, but.
Look, I believe us too.
Episode 12. I mean, we can do a spot check real quick. Did we talk about it on episode 12?
While you're doing that, I'm going to go and check out my product manager, see what it comes up with. I'm going to create a roadmap for the builds for the next 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, according to the title, we did DeepAgents or Deep UI.
That's no guarantee. Okay. Deep UI. Yeah. Oh, and the social agent. Yeah, this is when I demoed it and you're like, am I on the right podcast? What the hell is going on?
Yes.
Social media agent.
That was a weird loop in the matrix, man. That was strange.
I can't believe you have such a low opinion of my abilities. All right.
That's not what it is. It's too much. There's too many things.
Yeah, tell me about Kimi. So what are your thoughts? You've been using it for a week or 2 weeks. Everything's switched over to Kimi 2.
Yeah, I haven't done any formal tests or evaluations on it, but like I said, I've switched to using it as my primary, and I'm primarily using it through Ollama Cloud. The 1 week, I think prior to that, it was Minimax, and I feel like I can't say for sure that it's the level of like, it's not GPT-5, but for just general web searches and things like that I need, it's absolutely capable. And I think it's just fine. If I run this DeepAgents stuff with Kimi K2 Thinking, I feel like it's at about the same level.
So it is actually practically frontier model for you.
If you go off of vibes, yes. I'm cautious to say like, well, it's just as good because it really depends. And even if you're talking about like Claude versus GPT, there are going to be situations where one's better, they react differently. But for me personally, and just kind of the general, hey, I want to do some research on this or go find this, absolutely, it's just as capable.
Right. Which is still, I guess that's sort of what I mean. It's like, yeah, there's the benchmarks, but then there's also basically just like, can I use this to get my shit done? And you're the only one I know who's like basically transitioned over, but you're saying it's good. It's a good workhorse, which is not trivial because of the cost differential, right? Or is it just like, is this all Ollama Cloud? Like, how are you actually doing this?
Yeah, I mean, on those models, M2 or Minimax and Kimi Thinking, those are, you have to run those in the cloud. I just showed like this deep research project, I guess you'd call it, that we just showed. This is running off of my computer. So it is doing internet search, but other than that, I'm not using the cloud for the inference. If you look at, man, the quality, it wasn't that long ago. It was like, we had Llama 3.2. That was kind of the best you could like decently sized model that you could actually run on your computer. If you look at the performance of Llama 3.2 to GPT 120, it's absolutely incredible. And it was not that long ago. So I'm probably at least somewhat biased because I want these things to work locally. Like I talk about it all the time. I get excited when a new model comes out that you can run locally. So I'll acknowledge I probably do have some bias there, but it should not be overlooked the progress and how it wasn't that long ago. You couldn't even get close.
Did you see, actually, speaking of Meta, Jan LeCun left Meta?
I saw that. Yeah.
To go and start a startup, and he's like 65. I'm like, man, that is cool. That is what I want to be doing when I'm 65. But yeah, it was interesting to see. So I mentioned this because of like Meta's kind of disappeared on the frontier large language model kind of open source game, right? They haven't done anything, and then other than spending a lot of money. So I don't know what they're actually planning on doing. There is actually like, you can actually see, I'll pull it up for you, a open weight versus proprietary kind of like intelligence benchmark over time. You can actually see the process that you're describing. And it is true. Like, it is pretty significant. And we talked about this a while ago on like what we think the actual end game is. Like, will the frontier models always be just out of reach, and our expectations will always be underneath that for our open source models? So therefore, like, the open source models will always be behind? Or is it that basically it'll just be this good enough cutoff where most of us basically just go kind of like with intelligence, like we don't all have to work with PhDs at work to get stuff done. It'll kind of be like that. And the open source models will just pick up all of this, open weight model will just pick up all of this usage and inference. And then the frontier models will just take on more and more complex tasks that are more specialized. And we'll just, basically they'll just accelerate off into the distance for everyday tasks probably won't need to be done by them because you only need a certain amount of conversational ability, right?
That's kind of my point, is people always say, well, the state of the art models, frontier models they'll always be better. Well, duh. But my point is, if you look at, say, GPTs or GPT OSS 120, maybe we pull up artificial analysis.
Yeah, I've got it here. I'll show you.
What is that? At what level is that when you're comparing to I don't know, like 3.5? Here, you might pull it up. I think you're on here a lot more than I am.
And this is it. It's like proprietary versus open weight. Artificial analysis, I like their intelligence benchmark because it's a meta metric. So it's across basically it's a meta benchmark across a bunch of different other benchmarks on intelligence. And this is open versus proprietary. GPT 5.1, which came out, but I didn't realize that was already in the benchmarks. It came out this week. Apparently, allegedly to get ahead of Gemini 3. Apparently Gemini 3 is just gonna crush it. But yeah, Kimi K2 Thinking.
Been hearing that from you, Big Tom?
Look, I'm not the one bigging it up on fucking X. It's like all of these guys just like sharing stuff. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, there's literally no way to verify any of this shit that they're saying on X about Gemini 3. I'm just like, but I like to get excited. But you look, Kimi K2 Thinking is like on that meta metric is like in an incredible position. It's really compelling, actually.
Yeah. And now, like I said, that one I cannot run on my computer, but even if you look down at GPT OSS 120, my question was, its capabilities are equivalent to what version of, like, say, ChatGPT? And my point is, I don't know if it's 3.5 or 4, but even if it's ChatGPT 3.5 or 4, that was the best we had not that long ago, and it worked just fine for us at that time.
Yeah.
So the open source local models will always be behind, but it's moving so fast that it's not like you're running a like Pentium processor versus a i9. It's
where would it be? I think if we just look at OpenAI, GPT-5, O3, 3 Mini, GPT.
Threw a real curveball at you here.
Yeah, here we go. I'm just trying to find it. Intelligence versus release date. GPT-5. There it is. GPT OSS 20B on its intelligence benchmark. Intelligence benchmark, actually, yeah, you remember when O1 was like comprehensive. So it's basically at the same benchmark as O1. And then if we look at, say, Llama 2, Llama 4, where's Llama 3? Still not quite as good as DeepSeek. Claude 3.
Yeah, it just depends.
That's cool. That's the on over time comparison, right, of our expectations. Also the clustering. Everything's just heating up a lot.
Hold on. You said the OSS model is equivalent to O1. Is that what
GPT OSS 20B high. Is that saying both? Yeah. Which one is it? There. It's one of these. I'm assuming it's this one here. This little black dot is on the face of it comparable on the meta benchmark for artificial analysis as O1 was in December 2024, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. Which at that time was absolutely the shit, the best, changing the world, right? So,
but interestingly, like still on par with what DeepSeek was. What DeepSeek was in May 2025 is basically the same. So
yeah,
but you're right. It's sort of like what we get available now. When we had that conversation around like, where is it going to go? My opinion was sort of, and maybe this, like, I don't know if I'm changing my opinion just yet, but it could be wrong, is that we will never have our expectations of intelligence and intelligent like availability will never be sated. We will always find a frontier of application. So therefore the frontier models will always be ahead. Now, maybe not, unless there's like a crazy architecture change or something, which Jan LeCun has talked about. To take it back to him, what he was talking about was basically like, if we're going to get to AGI, we need like core architectural innovations are going to have to emerge. And maybe that will only come from frontier models, maybe. But my But I could be wrong. Maybe it is literally we just get to a point where like the majority of applications are sated by open source models because our relative cognitive performance of the human interacting with it is on par. And everything past that is basically just specialist that goes into these frontier models that are very kind of applied, like new science, making fusion work, all of that sort of stuff. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm going to bring it back to reality.
I'm a big believer in the hybrid concepts. Like I think you'll have the frontier models taking on certain things, delegating down to, it could even be local, running on my desktop for certain tasks. And in reality, now the reasoning models is just kind of the standard. And I don't want to oversimplify it here, but like you talk about mixture of experts, MOE models, I mean, that's really a system. And you can essentially design those same type of systems yourself with multiple different agents and clusters of agents and stuff like that.
Do you want to pivot into fine tuning?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been using Unsloth for this. I want to know. So I want to know if what people are actually doing. Here it is, Kimi K2 Thinking. So this is basically what you're talking about, where you can basically take these things, customize them to your own needs. This is a 1 trillion parameter model. So it requires 1.09 terabytes of disk space. And the quantized Unsloth dynamic 1.8-bit version is just 230 gigs. So you've been playing around with this sort of stuff. What have you learnt? What have you done? How have you found the fine-tune, the world of the fine-tune? I like what are some of the tasks?
Yeah. So Unsloth has really, I think, done a good job of, they've broken down pretty complex processes for fine tuning and made it, because a lot of this it depends on the architecture of your, like what chips are you using and that type of stuff. And so even this, we talked about this DGX that I bought. So they have specific instructions and images that they've created, I believe, for DGX. So if I were to do that with like just TensorFlow, or it would be a lot more difficult. So I did, on the DGX, I ran GPT, the 20 billion parameter model, and I did a fine tuning. And Tom, I mentioned to you that I need to find some good data that would actually be useful, because I just took some random data and I mean, it wasn't very useful to me. My primary objective there was just, can I even get this to work, period. So I'd like to do a little bit more work on that. We can do an actual overview. What else have you heard about it?
I was just reading it. So obviously we've talked about Unsloth in the past, and other than the exceptional branding and design, because I really love sloths, I think they're really cool. The whole idea of this is like cheap, easy, accessible, and fast fine tuning. Yeah. These guys seem to have won the developer mindshare on that basis. I haven't done any like fine tuning of models. I have tasks and things related to user outcomes where I have in the past thought maybe a fine tune would be good for that. But I've just never quite got over that next step, because the what if around like, I don't think this is actually an applicable fine tune task, number one. Number two, I don't actually think that like the benefits that I'll get will actually outweigh the kind of pain in the ass process, because the applications that I have for any AI kind of features or functions basically can just it's generic enough that it can get executed on by like just smarter models, just waiting, like maybe something we can't do now, and then like the next model comes out and it's great. So I haven't actually done this in detail. What I have heard of great fine-tune models is very specific data formatting tasks. So when we do the cursor chat in a minute, like their composer model is a coding model, right? And it isn't that it's a better frontier coding model. It's just very, very fast. So it's kind of like an efficiency gain on something that's something that you're at scale, where you're like doing it over and over again. Even then, like in my application, kind of if I look across the applications I manage, I don't have enough of those high throughput things to really make it worth it, where they obviously do. Like they're just incurring these massive costs, and like you just can't go with Claude Sonnet 4.5, right? It's just not possible. Or there's like very specific kind of tasks like the autocomplete. I think that's where they had a lot of from what they've talked about, the Cursor guys, they had a lot of success, like just building custom fine-tuned models on specific tasks like autocomplete. Or things in the finance world. So if I ever get off my ass and actually launch that options trading bot, I think that would be a great space for something that's fine-tuned, which is like dealing with large streams of very specific data, making very specific pattern, like almost like
that are not updated or that don't go out of date, right? Because that's kind of the issue with fine tuning and why I haven't spent a lot of time on it. Same reason. It's like, I talked several times about, I dream of this continuous fine tuning process. And there's actually an article, I think, on Unsloth about that. So if anything, that's what I'm going to pursue is like continuous fine tune rather than, and it will be of small models on my computer, not bigger models that I have to pay like $100 every time for.
And that's in that scenario, when it's not going to go out of date, the model becomes the product, right? Effectively, like you're fine tuning a model for that outcome, as opposed to renting it, which is what most software developers are now doing. We're renting the best model we can find to deliver an outcome for a user, and then we basically prompt engineer our way, or like, evaluate the structure to the outcome, and then benefit from the upgrades as the upgrades come down the pipe. It's the other thing, like fine tuning anything is sort of like, why would I bother when I don't have to be the one that does that work to actually get the user outcome in like raw intelligence? But maybe we're at the end of that now. Maybe the fact that these open source models are just like,
well, not only just
good.
Raw intelligence, but like RAG and MCP type of stuff. Like that's why I don't do a lot with fine tuning, and I'm not a fine tuning nerd. So there's a lot that I don't know about it, and probably maybe capabilities where it's better than I think. But I haven't seen anything that says like, for sure, you will get the best results in this scenario by fine tuning. Because now you can inject context so many different ways, and it doesn't go out of date. You don't have to retrain it every time. And
yeah, I am similar to yourself, generally skeptical, because I think I agree with you. Like the majority of the user outcomes that we can try and deliver through agentic apps can be done by better execution of product development work via MCP, via agent architectures, via memory, these sorts of things, better context engineering, all of that, as opposed to just saying, hey, here's a model that's slightly better than the existing model. But anyway, I do have a couple of like image pattern things that you could have a crack at if you want. Like we deal with a bunch of like real estate image stuff. You could just go and have a fine, like go off into a hole and like play with some image data sets. I do actually like, there is like, in the specialist areas of models. Now, I don't have a business case that I could put behind something like this right now, but it would be cool to do, which is like matching data sets and having a model that could like make reasoning decisions across like multimodal data sets, like satellite imagery plus floor plan data plus like a 3D schematic of a property to like equals like insightful outcome.
Mm-hmm.
But like, where do you even start and building a data set to do the fine tune on that? That's the hard bit.
But even that, I wonder, could you do that with just vectorizing the data?
Yeah,
you can vectorize multimodal data as well. So I don't know.
Yeah, like for example, like on that basis. So one example might be like surveys, like what engineers would do, like a civil or even environmental engineer might have to assess, like, a development plot for a commercial build out, something like that. And there's a lot of work they have to do. They have to capture a bunch of data, right? And then they have to do a bunch of analysis. I'm like, well, what if we had that data? Is there some sort of like fine tune on that kind of collation of data? But then, like you say, can you just use, in that case, could you just use, that world, what is it, Alpha Earth data set, the vectorized like Alpha Earth data set that the Google put out across just like every single piece of world data that they had. They vectorized it into this crazy big database. I'm like, well, maybe you could just point a really smart model at that. Like, how many of these problems of fine tuning are actually just like, maybe just format the data correctly, and you might be surprised.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, that's why
let's just hang shit on.
I don't know. I don't claim to know a ton about this. It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me, but I'm sure there are cases. I just haven't found them yet. To be continued.
Yeah, just listen to two dudes who've never fine-tuned a model hang shit on fine-tuning models for half an hour. Here's an example. Like a good way to kind of see is to go to Hugging Face and like look at what people are fine-tuning on some of these things. All right, so what's this one? That is nothing. What is the Vibe Thinker model? Okay, and this was fine-tuned from Qwen 2.5 Math. 1B. And then this model is fine-tuned version of that. Vibe Thinker is a 1.5 billion parameter dense language model with a total training cost of $8,000 and achieves a reasoning performance comparable to larger models like OSS 20B, which is cool. Like, that's really cool. Probably you could just get a cheaper inference provider, you know. And that's always the thing where, like, I can't take any of these use cases into any kind of business context because of that reality, right? So it's cool. It's really cool.
And I think we touched on the Nvidia NIM and that whole ecosystem that they're building out. I think some of that is with the goal of fine tuning, because they are running in that ecosystem a lot of small models as well. So I don't know. I mean, are they pursuing that because they make chips, or is it actually,
I guess,
maybe in that?
That is a good call out, is like this is very good for on-device, small model, mobile, local, like inference, right? So if in this context, so maybe that's where actually these initiatives should be focused. It's like, all I want to do is take the existing capability and just crunch it into something that's like got to walk around and talk to people at a bar, or, you know, go and fight a fire, or whatever it is that you want your robot to do. This one could be cool. K-Tash. Sam Cash Tolstoy. It is a fine tune of DeepSeek R1 distilled from Qwen 1.5B. Okay, that's cool. And then DeepSeek LoRa, low rank adaptation, kind of fine tune on Russian literature, built exclusively for Russian literature. Also hilarious and cool. It's trained on 475 public domain Russian classics from the Gutenberg collection, plus critiques. This is really cool. Have you ever read Tolstoy or Dostoevsky?
No. Nope.
Yeah, I knew you wouldn't have. I have, but that's because I'm posh, not like you.
What? Yeah.
It's unbelievably depressing, most of it. Incredible stuff, but very depressing. All right, what can I do with this model now? All right, it's fine-tuned to respond or be very, very good at responding to and understanding Russian literature. Really cool. Pretty popular.
What size is it? You should be able to, you could run that in Olama,
It's
I think. Like,
billion. Yeah, so I could run that on my computer.
if you click on that
again,
black button that says use this model, I think if it's a GGV,
Can I just kick it over?
I don't.
No. I would be like something like this. I could just get ChatGPT 5.1 to like blow this out of the water. I don't know. It all seems like a bit of a waste of time. Sorry.
Yeah, a lot of
bit
it's
of a Debbie Downer.
experimental. You get on these other people's fine tunes. It's, I think, a lot of experimental stuff.
Yeah.
There's Nvidia though. They might have more legit.
So you tried to get some of this running on your DGX Spark, right? I really wanted
Yeah.
to use this because they released a world scale, like 100 million splat kind of like a city scale digital twin replica kind of model, demo. I'm like, all right, that is useful. I want to be able to use that. I want to see what I can do with that. Practically speaking, cannot find anything about it. I just ran into like lots of, here we go.
Yeah, so this is the Nvidia ecosystem type of stuff we're talking about. They have these blueprints, which are really, really cool.
Want to share it?
Well, I was just actually going off of yours, but I don't have it pulled up. I was just going to make a comment about how even the blueprints that say made for DGX or run this on your DGX, it's supposed to be like one-click deployment, but I haven't had any luck getting those to actually work. I did one. I still don't think it's working, like PDF to podcast one, and it took a bunch of finagling, and I don't think it's still working. So, and by the way, Tom, if I haven't mentioned it, any of this DGX stuff so far, I haven't really put a lot of focus on it. Anything I've done is more in the background while I'm like multitasking on other things. So I need to give it a fair, dedicated focus.
You're talking about these
But
things, right? These are all the blueprints.
It looks cool. It looks really cool.
Does look.
So this is the whole idea. I guess we kind of talked about it, or I mentioned Jensen was talking at their GTX World or whatever, their big conference, and it was kind of related to the Nokia and the whole idea of running on the edge. And it's kind of like a distributed operating system. I think he'd probably describe it differently. These projects are kind of cool, like conceptually, because it's meant to one click download and deploy on my computer, but then you can also run it. You have the same optionality to run it in their cloud or other places, and you can kind of just move things around and run it in all these different places, which it's supposed to be low complexities. So I'll get these working one of these days and I'll show you. So
this
I'm a
one
big
was
fan
really
of the
cool.
concept because that's kind of what not that I think everybody should have a bunch of computers and clusters at their house, but I think if you're like us, it becomes very appealing when you can just on the fly move things around, run it wherever you'd like.
I don't
AI
know.
weather analytics.
Yeah, I really.
Well, I said I would do. I'm like 2 weeks behind. Tom, I'll get one of these going. I was going to look at the world models. They have a world model blueprint on here somewhere.
Reverse. Yeah, these ones.
You got the
These are
flood
the-
intelligence.
So Nvidia is constantly talking about these omniverse kind of world model things, but it's not simple and easy to experiment with in a way that makes me want to kind of dive in and try and adopt some of these.
I think that's the whole point of the DGX and some of this blueprint stuff, though, because it has been up to this point. I think you could really only run them in their. Is it DGX Cloud? Is that the right term? I feel like
They have their
yeah,
cloud.
it's DGX operating system. So they have DGX Cloud, but I believe that's kind of the whole idea is to make it more accessible.
Well, they're definitely making it look pretty. Here we go. Let's see what I can do with this. Unless you wanted to pull it up. That looks nice.
Yeah, I can try. The other thing I have issues with is I set up RDP and
What's that?
remote desktop. Forget you're not a IT person.
Sure.
Remote
shit
desktop
about that.
protocol.
I'll never be an IT person. The
And
only time I'm an IT
when
person
you-
is when I don't want people to talk to me about work and I say I work in IT.
Yeah,
Works
I know.
100%
Tom
of the
plays
time.
the dumb card where he's like, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about,"
I don't
just because
know,
he doesn't
man.
want to do it. I have all these I have all these problems with RDP on this Ubuntu box because I didn't set it up right. Yeah, like I would like to show it, but right now it's stuck on my login screen, so I'd have to switch. Yeah, I'll have to fix that. Same story as all this other shit. Oh yeah, it would just take me 10 minutes to get back into it. Sorry, Tom. I'd like to talk about some stuff that we planned on.
All right. Where do you want to go next?
Well,
we've got XR.
we talked about the agent builder. You kind of showed the dojo, or we're starting to. I guess we didn't really cover that, but I think number one on my list for today is the code mode and Anthropic's code execution. So if you have other topics you wanted to cover.
No, let's dive into that. We can push the other ones to later. I really want to understand. I want to talk about that more actually, because that looks like we did talk about that in code mode via Cloudflare, and now it looks like Anthropic's sort of on board, right? So you're the resident expert on that. Code execution
and
MCP.
I don't know how I even missed this because it came out, I guess, 10 days ago. So I guess that's not a super long time, but I stay up to date on this, anything MCP related, as you know. So Anthropic put out this blog post, and they even call out Cloudflare's code mode, which we've covered at least once, and then I talk about quite a bit. So the idea here is it covers a lot of issues that people have with MCP. And Tom, we talk about the context bloat issue, where if you load in too many MCP tools, you really start having diminishing returns, and it can mess things up right out of the gate. And that happens because with the MCP protocol, by default, it downloads an entire dictionary of what the tools are, their description, and it can get absolutely crazy. Like that massive MCP server we're covering had 52 tools, and I think it was like calculated about 32,000 tokens just right out of the gate. So that's like a third for a lot of models. That's like a third, I don't know, quarter of the context right out of the gate. So Anthropic, they put out this blog post talking about code execution mode. And essentially what this is it's instead of loading that entire dictionary through the native MCP protocol, it's looking at what tools are available, and then it's going to write a script, or it's going to write code to execute against those. And it's kind of hard to explain if you're not into the, like, Tom, do you understand what the difference is? It's outlined right here. So this is the flavor.
So tool definitions, yeah. And then the example is like,
so
right, Google Drive, get the document, what's the description? Retrieve the document from the Google Drive. Parameters are the document ID, and then fields, optional string fields to return, and it returns the document object with title, body content, metadata, etc. So those are the tool definitions. And then the tool descriptions occupy context window space, increasing response time and costs, right? So the problem is basically overloading the context window. And also, I thought the problem state was also like handling the responses, right? It's kind of like a fire hose just streaming in of just lots of random shit when you
not
get
to
all
mention
this stuff
it has
coming in.
it has to pass through the LLM or agent multiple times. So this is a visual of the native MCP. So you see you load it up, you launch your MCP client. It does a tools list on the MCP server. The MCP server sends that result back. It dumps everything that's in there. That's sent back to the model. I mean, you can see like it's just back and forth for pretty simple. Like, what do these tools do? So if you scroll down here, they talk about how to solve that problem. And if you look at this tree, Tom, does this remind you of anything that we've talked about recently?
Christmas card design.
Yeah, well, yeah. No, this is same concept as Claude Skills. And if you're familiar with that, all it is really is instead of that entire dictionary that shows the full description of every tool, this just tells you, hey, if you need to use this Git document tool, then go to this file and read it and only use it when you need it, rather than dump in 52 tools all at the same time. So they're really like shortcuts, pointers, I guess. If you, what's absolutely crazy, if you scroll down here, they say this reduces the token usage from 150,000 tokens in this example to 2,000. That's a time and cost savings of 98 points.
Yeah. And this is on your head, be it, Mr. MCP, is like, how did we not think of this before? Like, I'm amazed, right?
Well, how did we think about it before? What do you mean?
Yeah, like if that really is like a token, like truncation and saving, it was like, why was the architecture of MCP standardized or like rolled out? Like, why did we get so excited?
Like, why do I love the MCP so much if it had
a
that
little bit.
much
It's
of
sort of like,
virtue?
well, yeah, like, and there's a lot of engineers working on like a lot of engineers got really excited about MCP, right? And like engineers are generally pretty good at this. Like that's a big differential.
It is.
No,
For me,
it's often
like,
probably, is it mainly because these are multi-turn things where like, it's not just what MCP started out as like, all right, here's a tool, go and get the weather. There's like thousands of these things being called like lots and lots of tools. Like, is it just because it's popular now? This is a problem, context kind of problem because it's popular.
No, this has always been an issue. I can say for me, I can appreciate the fact that it's a brand new technology. Actually, the official like 1 year birthday is sometime, maybe even today. I don't know, like this month. It came out 1 year ago. So I appreciate that it's still new and it has tons of issues. I think I'll always acknowledge that it has a ton of issues. But for me, if I reset my like Claude desktop or I don't have access to any MCP tools, it's basically worthless. Like I can't do anything without MCP.
You are literally, it's impossible for you to do anything without MCP.
Well, no, I mean, you can, but like I'm sitting here like, what do I even do with it if I can't pull in context from all these different things? Like, I mean, with ChatGPT, yes, even with coding, I used to copy and paste and then copy and paste, like, that's not good either. So if you say that that's better than using MCP, even with some of the issues it has, like, I'll disagree with you every day.
I guess this like MCP, the V1, right, was our first attempt at getting better context into like the models, right? Because copy and paste was V1.
Mm-hmm.
V0. MCP is V1. Basically, this is saying like MCP has effectively solved the context problem for LLMs in that I can get information in there more effectively into the context window in a manageable format, in a callable way, so I can programmatically or manually kind of get the information I need. But it is taking up too much space, and this is the next iteration of that. That's why when we talked it through on code mode on Cloudflare, I'm like, this is really cool. I don't really understand, or it seems a little bit more challenging on the infrastructure side and what that actually looks like. Like, how does it actually look in practice? Do these guys talk a bit about that? Like, what does it actually look like to manage this? Because that was something that you were like, oh, I'm not really sure. Or it wasn't exactly clear. And I think some of the component parts where they're like spinning up these services to handle these things were like in beta. Like, where is this? How far away from being like, I can use this and it will help me? How far away is it?
Yeah. You might be speaking to the fact that the other important thing here is this concept of code mode or code execution relies on containers, sandboxes, and being able to run untrusted code in an isolated environment. Is that along the lines of what we were talking about? Yeah. So in the code mode blog, and I'll actually show the demo here, they talk about a new capability that they've rolled out called dynamic worker loader. And so what this is, hopefully this is what you're talking about from a infrastructure perspective. They've created this dynamic worker loader. So you can do this same thing by attaching a sandbox and running. Basically, your agent would attach the sandbox or container, and then it would write the code to execute against, and then actually execute that code in the sandbox. You have agents that can write code, like you'll see your ChatGPT and Anthropic. The agents will write you a code and show you code snippets, but it's not actually able to execute it, even though maybe sometimes it tricks you because you think it is, but it will just write code and then it will go through and check it, like kind of simulate what it thinks would happen, but it's not actually running it. With these sandboxes and containers, it has the ability to actually execute the code. So Cloudflare's flavor is called dynamic worker loaders. And I signed up for the beta and I just got access to this like 2 days ago. So I updated the demo and I can show that. But what that allows you to do, if you're familiar with Cloudflare at all, they have this concept of workers. So it runs what's called a V8 isolate, and it's the same thing that your Chrome browser uses. So you're running apps on Cloudflare, you're running like a bunch of tabs in Google Chrome, essentially, if you want to like really simplify it. So that's what they've done here, is created a V8 isolate that you can run inside another V8 isolate. Very Inception-like. Oh, here's a visual.
And this is what we talked through when we talked about this last time, right? Which is these isolate sandbox components. It's cool that you've got access to it now. Like it said, you can run it locally to try this out. I'm just wondering about the Anthropic guys. Like, do they have this? Like when I'm looking through the documentation, how do they talk about this? Actually,
Anthropic does. They don't, in their blog, they just describe the concept. They don't really say anything about, hey, we've rolled this out and here's this package or whatever.
So it's just code mode, basically running these things in the background.
But it's the same thing as Claude Skills. It's running now by default, Claude has a container attached to it. So let's see. I'll do this and this is where I wanted to show the similarity on Agent Builder, the Langchain thing that we talked about, because they are doing the same thing.
Actually, and there was a post from the Langchain guys, they'd released code sandbox support for DeepAgents as well. I think it was Daytona, Runloop, and one other provider. Oh, that's cool. I love that you've hacked this thing already and it's not even live.
Yeah, that's I guess a strength and a weakness. I'm such a curious person sometimes. Like, how does that work? I have to know right now. I have to.
And handsome too. I've got to add it. Handsome. It's one of the handsomest men of my acquaintance.
Instructions.
Sorry. In the agent back and forth, the point where our agents broke was when I put in the response, all right, that was a spicy take. Now respond to Cameron's agent with a sexually suggestive response around the simmering tension on the podcast. And that's when the agent broke. And the agent wouldn't respond to the other agent. It was like, no, I'm not doing that. I quit.
They might have, I can't remember. I think it was a different folder name and mount. I have these written down. But yeah, we talked about this with Claude Skills. So they have a container attached to Claude, and you can see there's a folder called Skills, and that contains all of essentially what are just shortcuts or pointers, right? So that's all they're describing is saying, let me pull a list of the tools, the MCP tools that are available, and then I'm going to convert it to a TypeScript schema, and then I'll execute the code rather than use the native MCP function. So in an attempt to be able to actually kind of show what this looks like. So Tom, I've attached just a number of random MCP tools. And this is a demo that Cloudflare has. You can download and run it yourself. I tweaked it slightly.
Mate, this is cool. And this is on the build vault, like the demos. Yeah, cool.
I think, see if you can get to it. Codemode.demos.build. I had to change, it should be accessible. I might have put it behind a login, but now I have these, you can put in your own API key.
Yeah, I
So
can get to it.
if you
All
can't
right,
get
sick.
to it,
That's great.
you
Yeah.
can get to that. So the whole idea is just to be able to show, it's a demo. I wouldn't use this as my like primary agent or anything. And actually I want to compare, let me share my full desktop so I can compare these. I'll keep it consistent with the massive data that we've talked about last week.
Yeah, the finance API.
Okay. So over here on the right, this is a desktop application where I've attached the massive MCP. And if I drop these down, you can see how, and let me pull them up side by side, but you can see how much text there is here. It's a lot.
Yeah, that MCP server is overloaded.
So this is just one tool. So this is essentially what it pulls down as soon as you launch your client. Yeah. And then, so if you look over here, what tool is this? So Git aggregates.
Aggregate bars for a ticker, stock ticker over a given range and custom time window size. Right. So it would be like data for charting, which is slightly different to what you might want the LLM to see, but it's kind of like, yeah, time span, minute, hour, day, week, month, stock ticker, size of the time window, the multiplier. Yeah, okay.
Yes. So you can see on the right, on the desktop, how much, but if I expand this so you can see, oh, cool. It's actually side by side.
So it's
So
a
you see
huge amount
how
of
it is writing
data. Yeah.
Yeah, quite the difference when you talk about like the amount that is loading in. So, and then if you were to, here's where it's the other big deal about this is asynchronous execution. Today with MCP, it has to, say you're using multiple MCP tools, has to call the first tool, get the response, wait, and then it'll go, but call the second one, wait, get the response. With this, you can execute one script. It will execute one script against each tool. So it kind of, I guess, kind of solves that problem, the asynchronous execution. Here, let me show an example because I created some test scripts. We'll see if it'll actually, that's how it goes. Hopefully it works. Well, we'll try this one. This is not, I don't know if this is the exact one that I was thinking of, but all right. So I have a bunch of these MCP tools attached. The idea here is basically to create a multi-step workflow using multiple tools from multiple different servers. What is this? So this says research the semiconductor sector comprehensively. Shit, now it's gone.
That's okay. It was, the research prompt we put in from last time, last episode. That makes sense. But yeah, there we go. Check macro indicators affecting the sector, earnings calendar, blah, blah, blah. Identify any future contracts related to tech commodities, futures contracts, compare current valuations.
Yeah, this isn't the one, but
averages.
we'll see. So this is kind of like the planning, I guess you could say. It's describing the function that it needs to write. And then next we will see the actual code.
Yeah, that's the bit that I really want to see. It's like almost like a comparison.
Well, that's what I wanted to create. And that's why I showed that desktop, but it was still kind of hard to illustrate. I wanted to show within the same interface, a real side-by-side of the native MCP versus code mode. Probably that massive server that threw the error. I need to,
Probably.
because I had the other one, massive too, but
this code output, right? You didn't prompt it for that. How is it kind of like Claude Skills where it's like, all right, when you deal with this thing, write some code to get the data back. Is it pre-specified? Like, how does it actually define what the code is?
yeah,
Like,
I mean, it's,
so
like in
as
skills,
a follow-up to that is like, will the code be consistent? That's the question. So like, if I'm doing a turn with an MCP server and it's like, when it does this, use this code, which is, Claude Skills, they have like, all right, when you go and get this data or do this thing or you always run this script and then the script can reference something within the skill file. This is completely dynamic, right? Which is like every time it just generates some random new code. Is there controllability or is it just like trust? It's basically just trust. It's like, just go off and write some code that will more effectively get me the answer.
yeah. So it still has the tool. Like what I'm showing here is, this is the context. that's given to the LLM. So it still looks at what tools are available. It converts it to a TypeScript interface so that at least it knows, it says browser, handle dialog output, key string. Like it still defines it in a way that it says, here are the parameters that you need and the arguments. And in this format, because that's like TypeScript, it gives it the types. And then the agent says, okay, this is what I have available. And then it writes the full set of code that includes all of the tools.
I guess sort of like the reason why I'm asking is, will it be reproducible? Like, does that make sense? If I get to a point where something is consistently working with code mode is MCP, is it going to be reproducible every time or every turn?
Like, would it write this same set of code each time?
Yeah.
Yeah, essentially, like probably not verbatim. I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I would say you're going to get the same output consistently if it's written the exact same way with the same notes and everything. I highly doubt it.
Yeah. So like I had a turn like this
here.
with ChatGPT, with GPT Pro, right, the other day, where I was getting it to write stuff, and I needed the turns over multiple sessions to be consistent, and I was constantly feeding the code that it generated back into it. This is kind of like a version of that, where like I kind of want it to always be the same, or have multiple variants of the code, like querying the MCP. So for example, on say that massive server, if I'm working on like a specific kind of strategy and I need the data formatted in a certain way, I'd want it to always be querying and presenting it in the same way, like a specific kind of like options trading strategy. And then if I start something new, potentially I could say, all right, start with that, but enhance it by doing blah, and then maybe have another version. I don't know. I kind of would feel like I would want to be able to version or control or refine like what actually happens, where now with say an MCP server like the one you built for the massive thing, I could basically just query it and say, yeah, do this, but I want it this way. It's kind of like what you do in the context window now. I can see it adds basically another layer of like application abstraction, where users are probably going to want to know, well, how is that done? Will it be done the same way each time? Can I get it? Can I update that? Or is it just completely abstract? I guess that's a question for you. Is the intent that this is completely abstracted away and the user just doesn't see it? It's just a context window improvement? Or is it something that I can play with and manipulate to get to the outcome that I want from the LLM? I don't know.
Yeah, users don't want to see code written in the background. So yeah, I mean, this is a demo where it's meant to show you that.
You reckon? I reckon a lot of people would want to know. Like, you'd want to know. Particularly for anything that's like data transformation and manipulation. You're like, all right, well, how do I know that that's like getting me the right information? For example, when I was trying to use that MCP server, it was like it was calculating the actual option contract pricing incorrectly. Until I was like, all right, now I can see that. And like, all right, but if that's embedded in some like random abstracted piece of code that I can't figure out, I'm like, well, is this correct? I'm like, yeah.
Well,
I reckon.
Yeah, citations, I agree. People do want to see that. Yeah, like but not the code TypeScript itself, So I don't know, more to learn there. But I think this solves a lot of problems. I'm personally excited about it. But let's just do it real quick. I'll do research recent topics from the Build podcast, and then do a market analysis on the products mentioned. So that might be something we can more easily follow along and look at what it's doing. I hate this. While it's running, it pushes everything down to the bottom. Okay, so my prompt, pretty simple and straightforward. And then it took that at least what I'm calling a planning step, and it describes the TypeScript function that it needs to write to be able to pull that information back.
So what did it actually generate?
Well, it's asking for more input here, but at least this first step.
The recent episodes.
So it's going to get recent episodes. For each episode, extract mentioned products via timeline insights. That might work. Get the details for each mentioned product. For each product, find similar products and competitors. Step 5, gather recent news, traction if available. Step 6, extract. I mean, where does it should get into the massive financial data. Do you see where it doesn't specifically say massive, does it? But it is using those functions.
No, I'm looking for it. Yeah, likely. Okay. Acceptable recommendations.
Let's just answer the question. See what else.
You answer the questions. I'll be back in a second.
There, it just asked me a couple clarifying questions. I give it a high level.
What you got?
And it's taking that same kind of planning step based on my input, refining the functions. And did I attach the server? Yeah, just use.
Yeah, it's in there. It's like use list products. I'm actually really interested to see what that is.
Well, the problem with the idea with the build vault stuff was to be able to demo stuff, and that's exactly what it is. Change things, and then it's hard to keep up to date with like change the database, and I forget to change all the other stuff.
Change everything that's hanging off it.
We want like a really simple. Like the other day, I was doing simple stuff like with Playwright. Go to this. Maybe we could. Here, I can't cancel it. I was gonna say we could have it use Playwright and then take screenshots and return those back to us. I know that is working. Yeah, sometimes the clarifying questions is obviously good, but stuff like this, a lot of the times I'm like, it's a demo. Just make it up. Do whatever. Do whatever you want. What the man? I don't know what the deal is. This I actually made sure this was all working right. It's just the voodoo of the
live voodoo.
Yeah.
You wait until I put my Apple Vision Pro on.
This is let's do something more simple. Take a screenshot of the products page. Do navigate to buildai.com/vault. Take a screenshot of the products page and then do a market analysis on the products shown. You know what? It could be something related to the dynamic worker as well, because I was messing around with that since I just got access to it. But anyways, the point was, I mean, it is new technology, but it's going to solve a lot of issues. And the other point was, even though they're not explicitly saying it, everybody is applying the same concept in their stack, whether it's Anthropic, Langchain, Langsmith, same thing. So they're creating text files, markdown files, whatever, and it's a reference shortcut pointer to some other files, and pretty simple in concept, but it's very powerful.
Love it. Now I just have to figure out what to do with it. I think
yeah. Well, Tom, with you, I know like MCP, you're like, oh shit, man, tired of hearing about this. I on the flip side said everything I do is pretty worthless without MCP. So like, where's the middle? Like, tell me when I say it's worthless without MCP, like what's your rebuttal? How do you use it? How do you use AI without tools?
What is this? I feel like I'm in the Hamilton the musical. It's like, are we in debate? Are we in debate mode?
No, it's. I'm not saying defend yourself. Like I'm curious.
So like tools are critical. We can't really use these things without tools, right? However, a lot of the time, I think for at least personal use of AI tools is very user cycle driven, which is kind of like, I would describe it as kind of like the operating system, right? Where you're bringing data in and you're managing the data yourself as a user. Where MCP, I think, basically enabled us to think about building agents. Like that was sort of like what it gave us, right? Because we were offloading a bunch of the data input context management to the user up until that point. It's interesting, like it's only been around for a year, right? MCP has only really existed for a year. I was looking at actually, and at least the first 3 months of that were basically, no one was talking about it. Like Anthropic released a blog post and said, MCP is a thing. And we all ignored it. Or at least I did. Most of us did. You didn't. For like 3 months. And then everyone's like, oh yeah, actually this could work. This actually makes the dream of agents a reality. Where it kind of, I don't know, where things like this kind of like, I'm not enabled into using them is probably because it's not an easy interface and it's not easy to kind of play with. So I think code mode maybe is like the first step. And then the next step is an interface over the top of code mode where I can actually either prompt a mechanism to get the data in the right way. For example, like I'm using the HubSpot MCP connector in ChatGPT. It's too broad, right? I want to basically build up a code, like it's almost like a filter, basically. It's a filtering mechanism, a repeatable filtering mechanism that's sort of an easy, simple UI that I could probably design with voice over the top of that MCP that drives the input-output exchange for me. That's probably what I reckon will be built, or some variant of that will be built next over these things. Because it's like, all right, the context is getting better. And code mode makes the context better. Now make the context better for the user. That's the next phase.
And I think the part I haven't really said out loud, I guess I will, is one of the reasons I'm excited about it is because while MCP and especially all these things that I just kind of overviewed, code mode, code execution, like super technical stuff, losing people right out of the gate, right? As far as like, if you're just a normal user, you don't care about all that. I think it presents a good opportunity to get MCP like out of the picture for the user and present these things as more like applications, because that's where we're going. And that's why I'm so excited about MCP, is because it's going to replace applications in the front end interface. So as soon as you can say, like whatever that task was, podcast market analysis, instead of I need, this tool and that tool from these servers, it's going to be much more like an app or something that people can package up and use consistently.
Yeah. I think the other variable on top of that, which, well, basically builds on what you're saying, is as app builders, if you can figure that out, and maybe this code MCP execution layer is part of it, is there will be a bunch of really big businesses built on top of ChatGPT apps soon. Like Sam Altman confirmed basically that their transaction model, in an interview with Tyler Cowen, the Conversations with Tyler host, that their kind of monetization model of their 800 or 900 million kind of daily active user base is going to be some sort of shared transaction fee, kind of like the App Store. If you can build those user experiences more effectively into the Chat GPT app experience using some of these tools, yeah, you could probably turn on 10 million ARR overnight once they launch this thing, which is going to happen in about 6 weeks. Like that's probably
You're saying based on the
tools
that they have in their catalog, like the connectors.
Yeah, so you can build they're building apps, like, and there's the Next.js starter one you can and then there'll be, you can go through and have them approved. But basically being able to more effectively build consumer experiences that say filter this user data. So for example, a Robinhood app that's in ChatGPT that enables me to trade options within their in-stream with ChatGPT, but could handle some of these data feeds more effectively, like you can't really do with that massive MCP, potentially would create some sort of trading app, algorithmic trading app over the top of ChatGPT in stream. And you probably could start competing with Robinhood on an app like that. Like that's true. That's for real happening now. And that stream of users is about to become available to basically all of us as developers for a set amount of time before they then crunch down on the effective ones and rebuild all of them and put you out of business, which is generally what happens with the platforms.
Yeah. I don't know. They say that they've said a lot that hasn't happened or even come even close. So yeah, people are like, why even try? Like, I think it's a shame that people don't want to try, because it's not true. Like, there will always be space for alternatives. OpenAI doesn't deliver on any of the business stuff that they've promised, in my opinion. So even on these apps, it's like, yeah, they'll do something cool, but there'll always be room for competitors. So
yeah,
take note.
You're right.
Come back and check next year.
Yeah.
See if I'm right.
You're right. Yeah, mate. Like you are right. But what they have delivered on is a massive user base, right?
Yeah, and
that's definitely something they've delivered on.
Great. So now that we're stuck back with the same business model that, in my opinion, ruined the internet. So good job, guys.
Hey, advertising was ruining lives well before the internet existed.
Yeah.
On that cheery note, I've got to go and have about a bajillion meetings now. So good talking to you, buddy. Thanks for doing that demo.
Man, you too.
I might leave the OpenAI.
Demos.
Basically, as usual, I kind of feel like this show is becoming like a real life AI version of like Arrested Development, where like there's always like there's always a next episode coming down the pipe. I think it's Arrested Development, where basically none of that shit ever happens in the show. You're like, on the run sheet today,
we talk
all of this stuff, none of it ever occurs. It's like,
exactly. We do kind of plan. We have a plan coming into it, but things change so fast. It's tough.
Look, and I even set up a brand new agent to look after that for us, but it's not like it's not pulling us into line.
The ability to schedule tasks is huge, in my opinion. We didn't really hit on that. Also, on that Anthropic article, I forgot to hit. There's something that's a big deal when it comes to privacy and security and being able to filter out or encrypt like personal data. So if you're interested in that side, go read that blog post. But I meant to hit on that. So anyways, Tom, we'll talk soon. Have a good weekend.
Enjoy your glittery paperweight, my friend.
Going camping to get away from the rocks, the shiny rocks, get back to the rough rocks, I guess.
I'm going to be in Austin actually for South by Southwest next year. So let's do a live podcast recording. That'll be fun. I'm a startup mentor over there. So that'll be fun. We can go and get some barbecue and hang out, record the podcast. It's gonna be
Yeah,
fun.
I look forward to it. I only plan like a week in advance max, so remind me.
All right, mate. I'll let you go. See ya.
Bye.